Thank you very much. And I met today with the state and territory treasurers. We had a very frank discussion about the need for taxation reform in Australia and how we all need to work together to make sure that we can build a new tax system that will cope with the modern Australian economy. Specifically, the treasurers agreed to apply the GST to offshore sales into the Australian market. From the 1st of July, 2017, the GST will be applied to all products and services sold by vendors overseas into Australia. This will deliver competitive neutrality for Australian businesses. It will ensure that there is a fair and equal treatment of all goods and services, so that if goods and services in Australia were to have the GST applied by companies in Australia, then the same would apply overseas. The Treasurers failed to come to unanimous agreement to remove the application of the GST on feminine hygiene products. As is required under the intergovernmental agreement, there needs to be unanimous agreement of all the state and territories to a change in the base of the GST. There was no agreement. Therefore, the matter has come to an end and the current arrangements are in play. Importantly, there was recognition that we do need to reduce income tax rates, and that the Commonwealth needs to do that in order to address bracket creep and the growing disincentive for people to earn more income as they go into a higher tax bracket. Overall, there was a clear message from the Treasurers. We recognise that whatever we do has to stimulate economic growth in Australia. We've got to have a tax system that facilitates innovation, facilitates investment, and facilitates job creation. I must say what was most pleasing was that, unlike the federal opposition, none of the states or territories were ruling anything out. And that was a positive step forward. And what it effectively means is that we're going to have taxation officials travel around the world and visiting these companies and asking them to register for GST purposes should they be selling into the Australian market goods or services greater than 75,000 Australian dollars in value.
What would you do if a company doesn't pay? Just says, no, I'm not going to do it?
Well, increasingly the global pressure is going to force them to respond. And if you've got very substantial companies like Amazon, if you had substantial companies like Amazon that are operating in a number of jurisdictions and have considerable market share in some, they are actually quite willing to do it because effectively, you know, they don't pay the tax personally. It's the consumer that pays the tax. So they're remitting it to us for taxation purposes. The low value threshold has had a negative impact on Australian jobs and Australian businesses. So you would expect us to properly react, and we are. And we're doing it with the unanimous agreement of Labor states and territories and Liberal states. And it costs you your jobs ultimately. So we think it's only fair that this should be applied. The question has been, how do you do it? We've found a way forward. It's taken a lot of work, and we're working cooperatively with other jurisdictions, but we think this is the right response. In my discussions with Chairman Xu last week, the Chinese government is very mindful of the dislocations that may be associated with any increase in interest rates in the United States and the impact that'll have on currency. So there's lots of moving parts here. What I can say to you is that the Australian economy is incredibly robust. It continues to go through a transition. We have still, as of today, one of the fastest rates of economic growth of any developed nation in the world. We have highest job growth of any country compared with the G7. We are in pretty good shape, but we can always do better. Thanks very much.